the Chairman of the Presidential Task Force, Honorable Ministers, members of the PTF, gentlemen of the press, good evening. So first of all, I would like to just say that we had a very useful and productive meeting with members of the Public Accounts Committee today at the National Assembly from the House of Representatives side. It was very clear from the discussions we had, this was really a fact-finding and information-sharing event. But it was very clear from the discussions we had that there continues to be some confusion about the funding stream in terms of the PTF and how the COVID program is funded across the country. So there are several funding streams. If you look at from the government side, from the federal government side, there are 2 or 3 funding streams. The first one is money that is derived from the MDAs that represent PTF. This is the 2020 budget that has been identified for the purpose of COVID. And this money belongs to the MDAs, and they are responsible for spending the money. We then have a special intervention fund. That special intervention fund, as approved by Mr. President, is specifically for the purpose of COVID-19. And that money at the moment, which is about 22 billion, sits with the PTF, and the different MDAs all have a share of it, but they can only spend it following strict rules in terms of their submissions, in terms of submitting a procurement plan which will be approved, in terms of submitting a work plan, and if they have spent money, they need to provide a retirement in order for us to pay. At the moment, with that specific amount, we have only spent 0.02% of that. Most of it went towards the evacuation, towards the accommodation of Nigerians that were brought in the last few weeks. That money will be spent if the level of evidence provided to the PTF is good enough. It has to be good enough for the MDAs to be able to spend money. It has to be at the same level as you would expect with the different MDAs. There are some commitments that are going through, but the key thing to remember is we have to have transparency and accountability, and those funds will only be spent if there is clear justification that the process that needs to be followed has been followed. So that's the government side. We then have the private sector. From the private sector, we have CARCOVID, which is the Coalition Against Coronavirus Disease, which is co-chaired by the CBN, Governor Alhaji Aliko Dangote, and the Chief Executive of Access Bank, and some business entities. This is an entirely private sector arrangement. It's an initiative of the private sector. We do not see that money. We do not touch that money. And we can only provide advice to them in terms of what we feel they should do that will be in the best interest of the country. So for instance, we could say to them, well, we need isolation facilities in this city, or we need to increase the number of critical care beds in this city, or can you help us to fund testing, additional testing? For instance, with the Nigerians that are being evacuated at the moment, for Abuja, part of that testing is being supported by Dangote Foundation, and initially through arrangements with CARCOVID. So that's where they fit in. We do not keep their money, we do not touch their money, and we do not have any oversight of their money. This is a private sector arrangement. And then there's another funding stream which is from all of you Nigerians. And this is money that is paid into about 5 commercial accounts. Ranging from, I think, First Bank, GT, etc. And it has already been advertised, and these accounts collect money across the board from Nigerians. At the moment, I think that's about 850 million, and the money is then mopped up on a weekly basis by the Accountant General and kept with the Accountant General. And the money will then be utilized later on to supplement what comes to the PTF in terms of the Special Intervention Fund. But I must emphasize, the PTF is not a procuring entity. Neither is it an entity that has accounting rights in the same way that MDAs have. But we do authorize payment to the Accountant General if the process has been followed by those MDAs. And then we then have a host of other entities that provide commodities. But before then, I will talk about the UN Single Basket. Again, the UN Single Basket is a conglomerate of mostly multilaterals and bilaterals, including the EU and the UN system. And they have their own system as well. Their money stays with them, but we support them by providing proposals that go through the UN system. They are acknowledged, they are approved, and then their money is spent. Again, the money does not come to us. We then have entities that provide donation in kind, so commodities, PPE, test kits, etc. We will have a live dashboard that we will make available. We are committed to transparency. We'll make available that live dashboard that will show clearly what we have received as government for the COVID response. How many PPEs we've received, where they have been sent to, how many test kits we've received, and what our current stock levels are, etc. We will make available that, and we will also make available our harmonized budget once the new budget is finalized by the National Assembly. So that's to do with the expenditure. I think it's important for the general public to understand the process. In terms of flights, I'm sure the Honorable Minister of Foreign Affairs may want to update us further, but just wanted to let you know that so far we've brought in just over 300 Nigerians, and this week we will start the process of bringing in up to 500 persons into Abuja and 500 persons into Lagos. The key criteria for coming into the country is the need to have a PCR test for COVID-19 before boarding, and this needs to be valid within a 2-week period. We are aware of the difficulty of obtaining this test in certain countries, and we will be looking at this in further detail, but we can already see some of the advantages of having this pre-boarding test. We had a host of Nigerians that were tested last week, and some of them were positive, and we had to decline boarding for them. We hope they will clear their infection so that with the next cycle of flights, we'll be able to bring them home. My appeal really is to those that are coming in, the evacuees, to please cooperate with our guidelines, and when we ask you to self-isolate at home, please do so. We will arrange for a repeat test, but you need to self-isolate for 14 days regardless of the result of that test, because you could be in the incubation period. And I would like to express our gratitude to Dangote Foundation as well as the Lagos State Government for making this process as smooth as possible. Finally, the DG and CDC has already mentioned this, but we continue to be very concerned about the level of compliance with some of our guidelines, particularly looking at what's happened in Abuja over the weekend. It's very important to say that this pandemic is far from over. Do we want to get back to normal? Yes. If we want to get back to normal, then we need to start complying with the guidelines. The earlier we comply with the guidelines, the faster we'll be able to get on top of this pandemic. There are no two ways about it. Behavioral change is the only thing that can overcome this. We already have a lot of Nigerians dying. At the last count, more than 400 have died from this pandemic, people that possibly could have been alive with us now if they hadn't contracted this. I know it's very difficult, behavioral change is very difficult, but some aspects of it, like hand washing for instance, is part of and parcel of our culture. As we say, cleanliness is next to godliness. So to say that we are tired of washing our hands, I'm afraid is not a good excuse. It's important that we continue to maintain our personal hygiene, and it's part and parcel of protecting ourselves from COVID. But more importantly, we are relying on the public to please be each other's keeper and to respond and remind people that are not wearing masks in public to please and do so. Thank you.